Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Disneyverse podcast. Hope everyone is having a great evening, day, whatever time of the day you're listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and listening to us today, talking about the top 10 Disney Pixar movies of all time. Obviously, we have a little movie called Incredibles 2, which made a few dollars in the box office. We'll talk about that in just a couple of moments. First and foremost, we do want to say hello to the people who are on the show today. We have Vicky, Terry, and Trish joining us. Ladies, how are you today?
Doing great.
Good.
Pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a pretty big episode. We actually had to do math. Well, I had to do math. I had to figure out that, which I do a little bit better than pronouncing words and doing Spanish. And make sure you let Eduardo know about that, Trish.
Did you have Michelle double check your work?
No, I trust myself with the work.
Oh, okay.
But it was proofread. Anyway, so we have the top 10 Disney Pixar movies. We'll go into that in just a couple of moments. First of all, I just want to give a quick reminder. We do have our usual ways to contact the show. Facebook, Twitter, email. We go to the Facebook first. Facebook.com/Disneyverse podcast is the best way to hit us up on Facebook. Also, Twitter @Disneyverse Pod. And, of course, if you want to send us an email, if you have any questions or if you like to message us about anything, definitely send us up an email at DisneyversePodcast@gmail.com. Again, DisneyversePodcast@gmail.com. Looks like Vicky left the call, so we'll get her back on here in just a moment or two here. Just want to give a quick shout out to everybody out there who has liked the Disneyverse Podcast Facebook page and Twitter. We definitely try to keep that updated as quickly as possibly can with any of the news and notes that go on in the Disneyverse. And of course, with this top 10, it was kind of inspired by the movie, and Vicky is back. Hello again.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Apparently, she's using the same cell phone that I use, which is Sprint. God damn it. Hate that.
No, the problem was my mother.
Oh, okay. Well,
my mom called, so.
Oh, well, okay. So now you're making excuses.
You have dial-up or something? Can't be on the internet.
No.
Like,
She
Mom, I'm on a podcast right now. Gotta go.
No. What she did was she called using her 1-800-CALLATT calling card.
Oh, okay.
She's using that right now. That's the way that she's reaching people out. So this podcast was inspired by Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2 just came out over the weekend, and it set some records. I don't know if you guys saw this. In fact, some of the numbers were updated as of Monday. So I want to start with the weekend first. This movie, Incredibles 2, shattered, and I mean not just shattered. I mean it literally dropped Finding Nemo on its ass and basically said, "Yeah, we're going to go ahead and surpass that." So I mean, it literally. If you look at the totals here, I mean, you're looking at the numbers it made. It set a box office record for an animated film, $182.6 million, which is a record for any animated film, beating Dory's. In fact, it was Finding Dory, not Nemo, but either way, it was on its ass. And for a PG-rated title, it was also the 8th best opening of all time. In fact, it surpassed Captain America's Civil War, which was at $179.1 million.
Wow.
On top of that, it just set an all-time Monday record. This is the news that broke through Deadline.com. It made $24 million just Monday, which set an all-time record for any film. It surpassed Black Panther. It surpassed Avengers. It surpassed any movie that has ever been made for a Monday. Incredibles 2. I mean, this clearly, Trish, was a simple recipe for how this movie came out. It's a family film. It was Father's Day weekend. People took Monday off because they wanted to have one more day with their kids. But this movie shattered so many records, and there's really no stopping it.
Wow, that's just amazing.
Yeah. I think Frozone has something to do with it, but that's just
makes you wonder if they're regretting waiting 14 years for it to come out, if they could have had this kind of earlier.
I don't know. Maybe part of the success was waiting so long. Like, finally.
Well, do you guys think it might have something to do with the fact that people were like, well, Incredibles, yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, it did well in the box office. I mean, I liked it. I thought it was a pretty funny movie. I thought it was pretty cool, Jack in the first one. But, I mean, it didn't seem like it didn't have, like, that appeal like Cars did, or didn't have the appeal like, you know, Toy Story, or some of the other Disney movies out there.
Well, I know a lot of people, like including my husband, The Incredibles is his favorite Pixar movie. That's like the top number one of his list. And I know quite a few people that feel the same way. And so, I mean, I'm not for me personally, but I mean, I enjoy it. But
right. Well, and I think
there's
it also,
quite a few people.
Yeah, and I think also it has to do maybe with the fact that, you know, everyone has an infatuation with some sort of superhero. They like, you know, how someone can lift cars over their head, or they can shoot lasers out of their eyes, or, you know, things like, I mean, things like that. I mean, it's just that fascination of things that they normally can't do, but it's also the whole, you know, they're going to adjust it to urban life. We're not going to go into any of the spoilers, obviously, right now, but we'll talk about that another time. Later
Trish
on,
and I tried to go together. We tried to go see The Incredibles, and it didn't work out because the theaters were so busy.
Yeah.
We tried meeting at one theater that neither one of us could find decent parking, and then all the shows that we were going to go see were sold out. So she went home, and I went to a complete other theater on the other side of town to try and see Incredibles on Sunday.
I believe Terry drove.
It was a madhouse.
Terry drove 300 miles across state lines.
Okay, no, it wasn't like that. But I was walking in downtown Reno wearing an Incredibles ears with a red shirt on.
I love it.
Yeah, well,
so I'm sure people knew exactly where I was going.
I expect you to wear something Disney related when Tipsyland happens, which, by the way, if you are in the Northern Nevada, Northern California, down there just taking a little bit of pictures here and there, but I can't drink any alcohol. It's just something I can't do. But it should be a lot of fun, people getting dressed up, so I'm going to be doing some pictures for the show. So you'll be seeing some pictures along the lines of that coming up in the near future. Next few weeks, actually, I think in the next couple weeks that's going to come out. So you'll see that on the Disneyverse Podcast Facebook page pretty soon. But with that being said, we are going to go ahead and now dive into our top 10 Disney Pixar movies. Now, this is just our list. This is not the official Disney list. However, we do expect Disney to adapt this list and make it their own. So,
well, of course.
I mean, that's the way I see it. But, of course, this is just based on our decision. This is our votes. So 10-1, not really anything that came in order as far as the votes originally, but with all the votes and points that added up, this is how it came out. So, are you ladies ready?
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. Now, I'm sure you guys have your ideas as far as what's number 10, 9, 8, 7, and all the way to 1. But with the votes that were counted, this is the number 10 movie. And if you have an appetite, you may want to watch this movie or maybe not want to watch it. Depends on what your mood is.
What are you doing?
I'm cutting vegetables. I'm cutting the vegetables.
No, you wasted energy and time. You think cooking is a cute job, eh? Like mommy in the kitchen? Well, mommy never had to face the dinner rush when the orders come flooding in and every dish is different and none are simple and all of the different cooking times, but must arrive on the customer's table at exactly the same time, hot and chocolate.
That's funny because if you asked me, I would have said number 10 is probably going to be something like Ratatouille.
Ratatouille.
Because I know it's not up there on most people's Pixar lists.
It is. It's not on most people's list, but you know, this is one of those movies that I think. I mean, the beauty about Pixar is that there's different movies that they do that are set for different genres, and you're going to find this in this list. There's so many different emotions. There's so many different elements in the movie that really transcend how animation is, and it's more about the storytelling than just the animation. Vicky, I mean, this was a movie. I think you had it. Didn't you have it on your list, or did you not have it on your list?
I don't think so.
It was on mine.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can
It
blame.
was number 2 on mine.
It was number 6 on mine.
Okay, so you can blame Vicky.
I don't even think it
for,
made my top 10. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so if Vicky would have put this on her top 10, this would have been much higher. But okay, so
animated food porn.
It's animated. Well, I mean,
Okay, I'm a germaphobe, so the idea of a rat in the kitchen gives me hives.
Okay. you do realize this is an animated feature. This is not based on a true story. Okay, just checking.
It came out while I was in culinary school, and they were using all the proper terms, and yes, it's a movie about, it's a Disney Pixar movie about food, using proper terminology that most people weren't familiar with, so I loved it.
So, you know, this was also one of those movies, too, that I think as we get into the list, as I kind of just mentioned a second ago, it really sets up kind of how culture is around the world. And I mean, French food, French dining is a big deal. It is a ginormous big deal. They, obviously in the United States, you're going to, you can eat buffets, whatever, but France, it's, one of those places, especially in Paris, that you don't necessarily need the quantity of the food, but it's usually the quality of the food where you get the smaller portions. It's about the flavor.
When I was on my honeymoon on the Disney cruise last November, we ate at Remy's on the ship, which is, the French restaurant, and the chef was born and raised in Paris and trained in Paris, 3 Michelin stars, where I'm like, we have to go. Because how often do you get that chance? You don't get that chance very often at all. And it was amazing. And like you said, it was, it's about quality, not quantity, because yes, the portions are small, but boy, by the time you're done, you are full.
Right. Well, and again, because there's different little plates that come out. It's all the preparation. It's how it's presented and everything. So Ratatouille, number 10 on the list of the top 10 Disney Pixar movies, according to the Disneyverse podcast. Now, number 9, little switching gears. Hint, hint. Switching gears. Hint, hint. A movie that blesses Americana.
The interstate?
The only one seeing this, right?
Cars. Number 9 of the top 10 movies. This was actually ranked, I want to say, I'm trying to remember my list. I think I had this ranked like number 3 or 2. Just because of my experiences driving through the desert of California, just seeing the old towns and everything like that. And it's also one of my favorite lands inside Disneyland. Terry, when you think about this movie, I mean, it's a fun movie, but I think it's about Americana, to tell you the truth.
I do too. I also think it was number 10 on my list. I will say it is my dad's number 1 movie of all time. Like, he loves Cars. I do think it's a little amusing that the number 10 and number 9 slots both have lands in Disney parks.
That is true.
True.
So tell us about the number 10 land.
It is in Disneyland Paris, actually. Okay, so it's in the Hollywood Studios, and I ate at Bistro Chez Remy, and it was awesome. And they have a Ratatouille ride that is now coming to Epcot in Florida, so that's something to look forward to. It's like the Cars Land in California. They have, their own little section that has its own food, its own theming, rides, everything that looks like the movie. But I think the Cars Land in California Adventure is so unique because, like, Ratatouille is Paris. Yeah, it's Paris. But Cars is a completely different universe where cars are people. And, like, the canyons are cars. And the hotel are cones. And so they did a really, really fabulous job of bringing this fanciful world to life. So I think that gets a lot of people excited about Cars too.
But I also think, and I'll kind of piggyback on that. What really worked for me was not just the animation and the story, but also the soundtrack. This is one of the first movies on this list that I really, really enjoyed the soundtrack with Brad Paisley and some of the other acts as well. And it's got that country feel to it too, but it's a little bit of rock and roll as well. With John Mayer doing Route 66 and Life is a Highway by Rascal Flatts, and of course Brad Paisley, who's, I think, anything with him and John Lasseter, he's going to be part of like 7 different Pixar songs from each Cars movie. But Trish, this is one of those films that, it's just going to be something that's just going to last.
Oh yeah, no, it's such a great movie, and it wasn't on my top 10, and I'm starting to think, why wasn't it? And,
see?
But what's crazy is that I know a lot of people that don't like it. For a lot of people I know, people consider the whole Cars franchise to be the worst part of Pixar, and I've never gotten that because I think it's adorable, and I think their attention to detail is crazy. You know, the little beetle bugs that
Right.
fly
Yeah.
around. They're
I think
beetle
it's
bugs
I
and-
think it's Cars 2 that I think ruins it for people. And I mean, I'll tell you what, if we had the top 10 worst Disney Pixar movies list of all time, which we might do one of these days, that's got to be number one for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, people hate on both of the Cars sequels, but I think people hate Cars 2 the most.
Yeah, I just
I
cannot
didn't
stand
think
it.
Cars 2 was that bad. So,
Okay,
I mean,
well,
it wasn't wonderful, but what I liked about Cars 2 was the cinematography.
well, that's true. I mean,
It was a very
cinematography-
beautiful movie, and it was neat to see all these different places from around the world in the car universe.
Right.
Yes.
What about you, Vic?
Yeah.
Well, okay, it was a cute movie. I actually like Cars Land in California Adventure more than I like the movies. The movies are fine, I enjoy them, but when I first saw it, and again I'm showing my age, to me I was like, oh, it's Susie the Little Blue Coupe, but with racing cars. And that was a Disney short that actually is older than me, that I grew up watching, and I was just kind of like, well, I like that one better.
Well, that could have been one of the inspirations of it, possibly. I know John Lasseter had the
Possibly.
inspiration for Route 66 with the scenes and stuff, but you know that could have been one of those things that he was impressed and was living through there. So, all right, so number 9, Cars. Now, number 8 is an Academy Award winning movie. Number 8 is a movie that just came out. Are you afraid of spirits?
I wanted to keep a part of you alive.
Oh, how generous.
You really did play together.
Look, I don't want to fight about it. I just want you to make it right. Miguel can put my photo up,
Hector.
and I can cross over the bridge. I can see my girl. Ernesto, remember the night I left? That was a long time ago.
Number 8 is Coco. Coco, the animated feature that just this year won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature Film. Best Song, I believe, too, was a part of that as well.
Yep.
This got a lot of attention from people when I was doing some research on what other people felt was maybe their top 10s and maybe something like that. This was really up there with a lot of people, and it's a little surprising just because it just came out, with this film being so highly praised by many of Disney fans, of animation fans as well. You know, Terry, I know you love this movie. You had this up there pretty well on your list, I believe.
Yeah, this was my number 1.
Yeah, I was going to say. So, why did you think this was your number 1 favorite Pixar movie?
It just hit a lot of different areas for me. It is beautiful, and I love the soundtrack. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It celebrated a culture that doesn't get a lot of attention in the cinema world, and they did it right. They did it well. The people of Mexico love this movie.
I'm glad you didn't say I laughed, I cried, I hurled like Wayne's World, but that's okay. But
Like
yeah.
I laughed because I laughed at the heartfelt parts. I laughed at I cried at the heartfelt parts. I cried at the sad parts. It had a wonderful twist in it. Like everything about it was just amazing, and I love this movie.
What about you, Trish?
Oh yeah, no, it's a wonderful movie. I saw it also on the Disney cruise because it came out just like 2 days before we got on the ship, and even my husband cried. He doesn't cry very often in movies, but we're both sitting there.
We can make him cry. Don't worry. If we tell him Doctor Who's been canceled, trust me, he'll be sobbing for a month.
Well,
that's not true.
I was crying because the whole relationship of the father and the daughter, because it was my dad passed away 10 years ago, and it got me. And then for my husband, he's Cuban, he's not Mexican, but they have a lot of the similar things. And so all the grandmothers were reminding him of his grandmothers that have passed away. And so we're both crying, but for different reasons. And so, yeah.
But it
movie.
also surpasses cultures. You know, you don't have to be, Latino American. You don't have to be Hispanic. You don't have to be Asian. I mean, it's basically that relationship, and you don't think about stuff like that when you're watching, Disney films and a lot of animated films as well too. What about you, Vicky?
Oh, yeah. It was one of my top 5. I actually loved it because you're right. It transcends culture. I'm from a large Polish Catholic family. Half of them are right now in my living room. And,
Are they staring at you?
No, I closed the door.
Okay.
But I understood that family and that family connection, and it so resonated with me. And then I spent several years living in El Paso, Texas. So I'm very much exposed to the Latin culture, and I have a lot of friends and family members now that are from that culture, and so it meant so much to me on such a personal level. I was surprised because I didn't want to see it at first. I'm like, oh, I don't know, it's probably going to be chintzy, and then I saw it and I cried so much. I'm like, okay, I'm buying it.
Yeah, no, and it's again, there's a reason why movies like this win Best Animated Features.
Yes.
It wins a lot of the critically acclaimed. It's got a lot of the people who are really digging it. So, Coco, number 8 on the list. We're moving on now to number 7. Now, number 7, it did get a lot of praise from people, but I think as people have watched it maybe a few times, I think they've kind of opened up to it, and I'm really happy they have. Number 7, the animated feature from Disney Pixar.
Good morning. So, what's all this supposed to be? Oh. What?
I don't understand. I don't speak bear. Which I believe she says that.
I don't speak bear.
See, she doesn't speak bear. Number 7 is Brave, and I said that going into the film when you're talking about Brave. You know, people when they first watched it, it didn't have a huge amount of success on the box office. There was that buzz about having being Scottish and Scottish heritage and everything like that, and how you have to win the heart of the princess. But it turns out you don't necessarily need to win the heart of the princess. She wants to be her own person. But for me, it's the story about a mother and a daughter, and the daughter who's growing up. She's a teenager, becoming a young woman, and how the queen. She wants to kind of follow how things are, but down the line, she eventually says, you know what, let her be your person. It's not going to hurt anything. But nonetheless, Terry, this was this one was pretty emotional for me to watch it the first time, because it's just that emotional bond between a parent and a child.
I am not a parent, so I didn't have that.
But you're a child, though.
I am. This is my little sister's favorite, I believe, but I actually just crossed it off the very bottom. I think it was like number 11 on my list. So it's actually not in my top 10, but I do love it. And I love that it wasn't a love story.
Yes.
Amen.
As most of the princesses are, this was not. This was far more about being your own person and family than it was a romance, which was awesome.
Right, where the princess doesn't get the prince and all that kind of stuff. Vicky, what about you?
It was my number 1. And, I mean, I know it's hard to tell, but I'm a very strong woman. And, and I saw it, and I was just rooting for her because she wanted to be her own person. And that's how I was growing up. My poor father had to put up with me, and I'm super close with my mom. So I love that movie. I love to watch that movie. I could watch it every day.
And what about you, Trish?
I will admit, the first time I saw it, I only kind of liked it.
and that's kind of what I said too, because when it first came out, people were like,
Yeah, it was different from all the other princess movies, and it's like I knew that going in, but at the same time I didn't expect it to go in that way. And so, it ended up not being the romance I thought it was going to be.
Right.
Going in. So I was kind of thrown off, and but it's one of those ones that grows on you.
Right. Well, and it does, and it absolutely does, and it's just something that, again, kind of what you guys talked about, and it kind of opened my eyes just now when you guys were talking about the fact that, you know what, the princess doesn't necessarily need to have the prince to make it an animated feature, just love story. It can just be about the love for a parent of a child, just that. So, I think it's awesome. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite Pixar movies. Not my number one favorite, but it is up there. But so we're now in the part where we started getting, when we're doing the votes. In fact, we'll recap. Number 10 is Ratatouille. Number 9 is Cars. 8 is Coco. And number 7 is Brave. So now we're at the part of the top 10 where we had some people putting in some votes for certain things, and then someone put one movie a little bit lower than what they had, and it dropped the movie quite a bit. But there's nothing wrong with an original, an oldie but goodie, because generally the first one, sometimes it's the best, but in this list, not necessarily.
Whoa. Uh-oh. It's Sid.
He was at summer camp.
They must have kicked him out early this year.
No, not Sid.
Who is it this time?
I can't tell. Hey, where's Lenny?
Right here, Woody.
Number 6 is Toy Story. A little surprising because I thought this would have been a little higher on the top 10 list we have here. But obviously, it's the original one. It's the first one. Vicky, I'm going to start with you on this one. You can't go wrong with Toy Story. I mean, hell, they're making a land out of it at Disney World. I mean, for God's sakes. And they've got a very popular attraction at Disneyland itself with the Toy Story. One of my favorite attractions at California Adventure too. But when you first saw Toy Story, I mean, this was one of those movies. It's the original Pixar movie. Just the animation when it first came out was just. I mean, it's like when you watch Tron back in 1980 when it came out. It looked cheesy now, but back then you just kind of eyes bug out and you're just like, oh my gosh. And I mean the star power, the voices, Tom Hanks and you have Tom Hanks saying Tim Allen. Thank you. Yeah, you have those characters. I mean, this was an extraordinary movie when it came out back 23 years ago.
Well, ironically,
22,
when it came out, it was right after my son was born, and so although it is no longer in my top 5 movies, it's still my top 10 because I took my son to it when he was a baby, and so it's got this special connection. Plus, it's got a fun story. It's got a dark story. What's not to love?
I know where Sid just beats up all the toys there. Exactly.
And I had a brother who was kind of like that.
Well,
not quite so mean.
Okay, so
but we did blow up toys.
Well, this is not family therapy hour, but But Trish, what about you?
I remember seeing it in the theater and just being amazed at the graphics and everything. Of course, now you look back at it and it's kind of rough compared to what they're doing now, but
right.
It was just still amazing to watch a whole computer animated movie and good story and everything. And I don't know if the other 2 Toy Stories are on the list, but I actually prefer the second one over the first one.
Second one is really, really good, especially when the Sarah McLachlan song comes on, When She Loves Me. When my daughter, I'm gonna tell you,
somebody loves.
Oh my God! When I saw my daughter, okay, I'll tell you a fast story. So when I saw that movie, I heard the song, and I'm like, oh, that's a really, really pretty song. I see my daughter like a baby and stuff like that. She's in her carriage, and then all of a sudden I'm like playing that song, and I'm like visioning in my head that eventually I'm gonna be thrown into some sort of box on the side of the road or something like that. She'll be with her friends. Oh my God.
I heard if you want to make people cry at your wedding, make that your daddy-daughter dance.
Oh, jeez.
Oh my God. Okay.
I'm so glad I did not think of that last year. Oh my God.
Oh my God. It's not tears. There's just sprinklers going into your eyes. Terry, what about?
I cried enough during my daddy-daughter dance.
Oh my goodness. Terry, what about you?
Okay, so this one, just like we give Snow White credit for all of the animated features that come after it, every computer animated movie gets credit from Toy Story, because
Absolutely.
Toy Story was revolutionary. Like, people didn't know, what do you mean you're going to animate with computers? That's insane. And now it's just how many computer animated movies do we have? Like, so many!
There's
so
a ton
many
of them.
ridiculously good movies started
Even
from
low
this
budget.
one movie.
Yeah, even low budget movies too. They were like that as well.
And now it's just standard. But it's also like a great story, and it's funny, and it's heartwarming, and it's everything a movie should be, and it was great.
Right.
Still is.
Well, and I'll say this before we go to number 5. It makes you look at toys a little differently, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes you want to go hug all your toys.
I'll be looking at them and I'll be like,
sorry I neglected you.
no, you're looking at me, you're like, I wonder what they're up to. I wonder what they're doing. All right, so we are now officially halfway through our list. We are now to number 5. Now, number 5 was, when I saw this movie, it was unique. And when I say unique, you'll know why, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But it is possible of robot love could happen anywhere in the universe.
Liza, Lenley, are you a monka? Directive. Directive.
Wall-E, number 5. This was unique for me, and I don't know what you ladies thought, but when I saw this movie, for the first 40 minutes, there was no human interaction. There was at the very beginning of the movie where you heard the music and everything, and then it started to kind of pan back, and then you would slowly hear the music starting to kind of drift away, go lower, 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 and then pretty soon it's gone. So this was a very, very, very interesting movie, but an extremely well done movie.
I agree. It was on my list. When we sent you our list, what I wrote was, Wall-E, visually and emotionally beautiful. It's amazing what they did with 2 robots and very few words. Because you know exactly what those robots are thinking and feeling when they have no actual faces.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Because it's not about looks. It's about emotion. It's an emotional movie. It's a very emotional movie. Vicky, what about you? What do you think about that?
Well, when the movie started and Jerry Herman's score starts, I'm a huge Jerry Herman fan. He did Hello Dolly, which is in this movie. I was like, oh my God, I knew I'm going to love this movie. And then I'm a tree hugger, so I loved it. I was rooting for Wall-E to get the girl, and
Well, she did. She absolutely did.
I love this movie. It's my number 2 because I can also watch this one all the time. Of course, I love the music. I've loved the music for almost 50 years.
Right.
And it is such a classic love story told in such a unique way.
Yes, it is one of the most unique love stories because of, obviously, right away it's robots, but it's also just the interaction they have, but also the story about how, it's an environmental movie too, because this is what could happen if you don't take care of things, don't take care of plants. So there's a message with that, but
it does get a bad rap from there. I have heard complaints from people who say they don't like Wall-E because they think it's too political.
Oh, good Lord!
Well,
so they don't like the environmental side of it. They're like, it's too liberal, progressive. They're just trying to shove it down your throat. And I'm like, it's a movie about robots. Come on.
See, and people have said that too about Star Wars, especially the more recent one, The Last Jedi, about how there was a lot of feminism in it. I don't see it that way. I just think there's just a strong female character. There's nothing wrong with looking at it that way.
God forbid.
I know, God forbid. They can't wield a lightsaber, for God's sakes. Trish, what about you?
This is one of the movies that I love it and I hate it at the same time, because I don't like a lot of movies that are kind of this post-apocalyptic environment where everything's gone to hell. And
I don't bring you over for Mad Max.
No.
Got it.
Definitely not my cup of tea. And
she's going to bring it to the Thunderdome.
Yeah. I don't know, it makes me feel depressed, and I don't like to feel that way when I'm watching a movie, especially a Disney movie. And so I like the love story with the robots, but I love the moment when they get off of Earth.
Right. Well, and they're also cleaner too, and everything like that. And that's kind of when the dialogue picks up. You have the human interaction and everything like that too. So, again, very, very well done movie. You can think of it as a political movie. I don't think of it as a political movie. It's just this is what could happen if this happens. If people want to think of it as political, then you know what? Go ahead and think of it as political. I don't think of it that way. So, we are now into the final four. The final four, where there was a lot of debate. Now, I can tell you this much. The final four, all 8 of people, of the votes, they were on this list. So everyone had these 4 movies on there. If I recall that. I could be wrong, but from what I remember, it had these final 4. So the first of the 4, well, number 4, is the original movie was back 14 years ago. The sequel just came out. But, we can always be incredible every now and then.
You authorized payment on the Walker policy?
Someone broke into their house, Mr. Huff. Their policy clearly covers him against
I don't want to know about their
litigation.
coverage, Bob. Don't tell me about their coverage. Tell me how you're keeping Insuracare in the black. Tell me how that's possible with you writing checks to every Harry Hardluck and Sally sob story that gives you a phone call.
The Incredibles, the original one, at number 4. We kind of dived into that a little bit with the whole superhero thing. So I'll just kind of bounce with what you guys think, just with the Incredibles original movie. Trish, I'll start with you. Number 4, Incredibles.
It's a good movie. It's not in my top 10. I mean, I think it's a very well done movie. It's not that I hate it or anything. It's just there wasn't room in the top 10 for it. And it's actually kind of, I think, the movie that started the superhero movies coming back. It really started with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's a good movie.
Yeah. Terry, what about you?
Even when we first met, my wife started calling my dad Mr. Incredible. He's got the same build as Bob Parr, so
okay.
He's Mr. Incredible. But yeah, I love this movie. I think it's hysterical. It was on my top 10. I think it's number 7.
Number 7. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have the same love for superhero movies that you guys do, but I love Incredible. Like, it's different for me. Like, it is a superhero movie, but it's a superhero movie that I would get excited about. So I think it kind of transcends, like, the people who love superheroes and the people who might not be so into superheroes, like me, can still love this movie.
What about you, Vicky?
I really liked it. Now, yes, I'm a little crazy for superhero movies, and I was a little leery when it first came out, but then, went to go see it, and I was like, oh my God, this is so funny. This is so great. There was something for me. There was something for my kid, and I will say that the sequel may have actually topped it, now that I've seen it. So
now, in fairness,
but I love the story.
Now, I'll say this because and first of all, I thought this was one of the 4 as far as all 8. So it looks like this was actually probably the top of the 7. So I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie that really, you think why it took so long to do this. When we did the poll, this was before the sequel came out, so we can't put the sequel on the list. But yeah, I mean, and especially with the fact that it made so much money in the sequel. I mean, it just proves the staying power that Bob Parr has, and the fact that Terry calls or Terry's wife calls her dad Mr. Incredible. That's very.
He got a Mr. Incredible hat that I made him for Father's Day.
That's awesome. I'll be waiting for mine in the mail. Anyway, so so that's number 4. Now number 3. Now you think about adventures, you think about your lifelong adventures, of how you have that one true adventure. Well, You know, we all can be explorers from young to old.
It's a beautiful day. Winds out of the east at 10 knots. Visibility unlimited. Enter the weather in the logbook. Oh, there's something down there. I will bring it back for science. Oh, it's a puppy. Ah, no time. A star. Lightning, hail. What are you doing? Ah!
Up, number 3 on the top 10 Disneyverse countdown. This is a movie that, you know, the lead actor was the voiced by a very, very old gentleman. It was Ed Asner, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, very, very old. So it's different it's not within the norm of lead actors in an animated feature, but perfect actor for it, perfect script, perfect storyline. Really shows that you're never too old to go on an adventure of a lifetime, and this was definitely in my top 3 as well. Vicky, I want to start with you.
I definitely loved it because not only that was one of the best openings of a movie ever. I was crying in the first 2 minutes of it. It was that emotional, and then I love the way it was written. I love the characters. I love the Errol Flynn, Howard Hughes type characters, and I of course love Doug, and the dog that we got last year looks suspiciously like him, and we think we're going to dress him up this year as Doug. So
you should have someone just do, "Hello there, my name is Doug. I am interested."
Oh no, yeah, my husband's already got them all wired. I'm
Oh my
worried.
God.
I love you.
I would like to show you human emotion. Squirrel. Oh my God.
You know how much of a vernacular that is, that you'll be talking with people, someone gets distracted and they go, "What, squirrel?" You know, it happens at my office.
Oh my God.
Who would have
That's
thought?
funny. That is funny. Trish, what about you?
This is one of my absolute favorites. And just like Vicky, I was crying within the first couple minutes, and I'm sitting there going, "What is happening? Why am I crying in a Disney Pixar movie like this in the first 5 minutes? This is not fair." And yeah, no, but it's a beautiful love story, and visuals and all the characters. It's just from beginning to end, it's just one of those really like near perfect movies.
Terry, what about you?
Still a better love story than Twilight. Anyways.
Oh, yes!
Yeah, so it's a love story in a couple of levels. It's a love story between Ella and Carl, and it's like the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life. And then it's him learning to love this child who he was not expecting to love at all, and going on this grand adventure, and it's surprising and it's beautiful, and I don't think I've met a single person who's like, "Oh, Up was terrible." Like, everybody loves this movie.
Yeah. Well, and it just shows that you're never too old to go on an adventure, and and it shows that Pixar can make you bawl like a little baby 5 minutes into a movie, so they can do that very well. All right, so we are now at the top 2. Now, I will ask what you ladies think what the number 1 movie is in just a moment before we go there, but we do want to go to number 2 first. Now, number 2 is a movie that, you know what? Crying after the first 5 minutes of that movie, too, just because of how it grabs you. But what's yours is mine.
Okay, don't make any sudden moves. Hop inside my mouth if you want to live.
Hop in your mouth, huh? And how does that make me live? Mine?
Because I can take you to your son.
Yeah, right.
No, I know your son. He's orange. He's got a gimpy fin on one side.
Fasten your seatbelts!
Finding, I just wanted to hear the mine.
Everybody quotes that too.
Oh, I know. Well, yes. Well, and also it's great that they put it in the submarine ride too. Mine, just restraining mine. Finding Nemo, number 2 on the Disneyverse top 10 Disney Pixar movies of all time. This was a movie that, you know, it kind of goes into people with disabilities a little bit with when you have your special fin. You know, you don't want to say it's a deformity. I mean, you don't want to use that proper terminology, but it shows that, you know, people with disabilities can you know, they can kind of do anything they want to, but obviously, you know, there's a little adventure on that as well. But Trish, I want to start with you on this one. What do you think about this movie?
Oh, love this movie, and yes, again, it was crying in the first 5 minutes, and
yes.
The seagulls. When the very first time we saw them in there, and they're going mine, mine, mine. When I went to high school, there were seagulls everywhere at our school, and so we were just laughing hysterically because it was like this is the first time we actually ever saw it, you know, articulated what they were saying, and it was like, oh my God, that's so true and so perfect. But I mean, what an adventure movie too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the whole thing and the way it's the cinematography and
the scene, the score of the movie as well, where it had like, you know, you see the deep ocean and the music just goes perfectly with it, with just the gentleness of it as well. Terry, what about you? What do you think about this?
So, I never saw Nemo as a fish with a disability, which is kind of interesting. Like, I suppose that he is, but I never really thought of him as disabled. But, I mean, I love this movie for a lot of reasons, and Ellen DeGeneres was absolutely the perfect Dory. I think...
Amen.
She was lovable in a character that you could have easily just, like, hated. Like, I think in real life, I don't know if I could handle a person like a Dory, but you just love Dory. She's so cute, and it's about friendship, and it's about family, and it's about adventure and everything, and it's in this beautiful, fun package.
Vicky, what about you?
I thought it was so cute, and I cried at the beginning. I think you got to be really hard to not cry at that scene. And I loved Bruce the shark because that was the funniest inside joke ever.
Right.
And, you know, it just, fish is friends, not food. And I gotta be honest, Dory's Just Keep Swimming, this movie came out during some difficult times in our lives, and I had a best friend who said, and to this day she still says it, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And so every time I go to Disneyland, I get her something with Dory on it, so that we can laugh about the hard days and how much better it is now.
Yeah, well, and it has that message too, because I every now and then I'll say that too. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. It's all right.
Yep.
Because we all
Don't
go
kill
through.
Them.
Yeah.
Don't kill them.
Yeah, exactly. Fish are friends, not food. You know. But yeah, I mean, it has, you know, everyone has those type of setbacks and things like that. I mean, we all go through stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it's a good movie. The score is wonderful, and number 2 on the list. So let's go through the top, or let's go 10 through 2, and then I'm going to ask you what you ladies think what the number 1 movie is. So, repeating, number 10, Ratatouille. Number 9 is Cars. Number 8, Coco. Number 7, Brave. 6 comes in with Toy Story. 5, WALL-E. Number 4, Incredibles. Number 3, Up. And number 2 is Finding Nemo. So with that being said, Vicky, I'm going to start with you first. What do you think is the number 1 movie based on our votes?
I think it's going to be Monsters, Inc.
Monsters, Inc. Okay. Terry?
It's either Monsters, Inc. or Inside Out.
Okay. And Trish?
I think it's going to be Monsters, Inc.
Monsters, Inc., Monsters, Inc., Monsters, Inc., or Inside Out. Well, I will tell you this.
I wonder which one it is.
Well, I can tell you this much. One of those movies did not make the top 10. It finished 11th.
Thank you for that.
So we will let you hang on that one, and we'll do another episode. No, I'm just kidding. So so we will reveal the number 1 movie in the Disney Pixar Disneyverse podcast top 10 list is
2319.
George Sanderson, please remain motionless. Prepare for decontamination.
Oh, not the CDA.
And all for a sock that doesn't even match her wardrobe that day. That is Monsters,
I know,
Inc.
but I love it.
2319 equals number one on the Disneyverse podcast. So obviously Inside Out finished 11th, but this movie was pretty consensus in the top 3 and 4 of our votes. And, you know, I had this in my top 4 as well. This was, just a fun movie. It's something that was completely out of left field as far as what you thought it was. I remember when the trailer came out, this was like, okay, this doesn't seem to be a movie that you would not expect it to be as funny as it was, or, just heartwarming at the same time. This had everything you would want in a Disney animated feature, but it had computers with Pixar.
That is surprising to me. I wouldn't have thought that Monsters Inc. would be number one.
It did. You know what? I thought it was going to be Inside Out. I honest to God thought Inside Out was going to be number one. That was on my top 5 just because of the emotional attachment with it. But then when I started getting the votes, I'm like, oh, this is not looking good.
Hey, Inside Out was on my top 10.
I know, but
I'm heartless. It wasn't on mine.
It wasn't on mine either.
Yeah, there were a couple people that didn't have it in their top 10, and that's unfortunately what dragged it down.
That's why they didn't think it would be number one, because they didn't even put it on their list.
All right, so Terry has some issues. We'll have to work them out. This has turned into like a psychiatric hour. Start charging guys like $300 an hour. So Vicky, I'll start with you on this one. Monsters Inc. number one on the list. What did you think about all this?
Oh, there were so many things I liked about it. Because first of all, it was fun, and I love that Mike Wazowski had a long name like mine, and you
like
don't see too many Polish names in movies. Let me tell you. And then I thought it was so funny, and I loved the surprise twist at the end, and I loved all the Easter eggs for crazy people like me. All the names, the monster names of real people in places that existed, and it was just so much fun.
Absolutely. Terry, what about you?
I think this came out when I was still... What year did it come out?
It came out in 2001.
So I was like middle school, maybe. So I was still young. But growing up, this was, you always hear about the monsters under the bed or the monsters in your closet. So they just took that concept and completely flipped it on its head, and it was hysterical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the fact that the monsters are afraid of the kids, and this adorable little girl, everybody's like terrified that she's gonna kill them. It was just so funny.
Kitty. You always call
I know! Ooh, Kitty!
I know!
She's not even afraid of them.
No,
like,
she's not.
I cut a monster.
No, well, and she also had, there would be moments where you would see her just kind of like freaked out and scared and stuff like that herself, because obviously, she's seeing kind of what's going on. But, Trish, this is just, it really grabs your heartstrings on so many levels, because when you get a child involved in something like this as a featured character, it's going to be dragging your heartstrings there for sure.
Oh, yeah. And, well, this was my number one on my list. And because it's just so creative. To me, it's the most creative of all the Pixar movies, because it's such an original story, original concept. Like what Terry said, they took the concept of the monster under the bed or the closet and they flipped it.
Right.
And, who would have thought of that? Who would have thought that they need the screams of children to power their city?
Right.
And
then now they have
laughter is even more powerful. Who thinks of that?
Right.
And so it's just, the creativity and also the Easter eggs, like what Vicky was saying, just seeing all the neat stuff that they came up with. It's just such a great movie.
And genuinely funny.
So the moral of this top 10, though, is that sequels do not make the list, apparently, because no sequels made this.
I know. You notice that, too?
I think Okay, so what I did is I pulled up a list of all of the Pixar movies, and I think I automatically eliminated all of the sequels. It was just like, I'm not even going to look at the sequels. I'm only going to look at the first ones. And then I made my list from there and had to cross off. I think the two that I crossed off at the very end were Brave and what was the other one? I don't know. But, and then I was like, okay, here's 10. Now I have to arrange them. So sequels weren't even on there at all. Even Toy Story sequels.
I had Toy Story 2 on my list.
Yeah, Toy Story 2.
I really enjoyed that one a lot because I actually enjoy it more than the first one. So
I love all of the Toy Stories, but I have a hard time.
Well,
number 3 I love, but also hate at the same time because it's a very sad, kind of dark movie.
Yeah, didn't you say one time it's a Holocaust Toy Story kind of movie?
You know who Kevin Smith is, the director?
Yeah.
Kevin Smith. He calls it Schindler's Toy Box.
Schindler's.
Oh my God! I can see that.
Well, I think ultimately, if we would have expanded it to a couple like a top 12, I think Toy Story, if I recall, would have made the Toy Story 2 would have made the top 12, probably right at number 12, and then Toy Story 3 would have probably been like 13 or 14 on that. But I mean, this is a good list, ladies. I think we have a very, very good list. Top 10 Disney Pixar movies. Of course, if you hear this episode and you want to let us know what your top 10 is, or if you just find, you want to just give your number one, hit us up on Facebook, hit us up on Twitter, send us an email as well. We love to hear yours as well. And of course, if you guys have a chance and have not seen it yet, but will be eventually going to see Incredibles 2. Let us know what you think about that movie as well. Of course, spoiler free as well. We'll do a spoiler little snippet maybe on the next episode of the podcast. Working on a new title as well. So if you have any show ideas, we love to hear what you guys have to say as well. If you want to be on the show, hit us up. We'd love to have new voices on as well, and people who can pronounce words better than me. So. So that's going to do it for an episode here today, here on the Disneyverse podcast. So my name is Michael. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Disneyverse podcast. For Trish, Vicky, Terry, again, Michael, thanks again for joining us here, and we will talk to you all later.